Later. And we're going. Great. Let's talk about our units. Do you want a big unit that will last, go hard, and overwhelm everybody who sees it? Do you want a unit that's renowned across the known world? Let's find out from some experts in having masterful units. Tonight on Fighting the World, Episode 6, Units. I'm Wistric.
And I'm Bruce, and I'm not ready for this level of joke.
And I'm very sorry, but it was going to happen. So.
You are not sorry.
I'm not at all.
Not sorry at all. Well, welcome to Fighting the World. Certain baronies and households that consistently turn out high-impact units on the rapier field have some things in common. So we wanted to delve deep today on how do they manage it, and pick the brains of certain leaders and representatives from some of the best on how they build and maintain a lasting company of rapier fighters who specialize in melee. So we want our panelists to introduce themselves and give us their names, that would be nice, their kingdoms, their role within the unit, and the name of the unit would be, I'm gonna say unit like 30 times now, and I'm not gonna be able to handle this. Damn it, Wistric. So I'm gonna start with Mara, since your face is up on my screen. Introduce yourself. What kingdom is your unit from? What was your role within that unit? And what is your unit, please?
All right, I am Mara, Eriksdottir, formerly of Midrealm, currently North Shield. My unit is the Wednesday Company, which is primarily out of the Midrealm. We have like floaters elsewhere, but we all fight with Midrealm. And my role when I've not been commanding has usually been line support and command when there's nobody else commanding.
All right, fabulous. So the unit is from the Midrealm mostly, with some outside floaters. Let's jump over to the East Kingdom. And Remy, you want to give yourself an introduction for us?
Sure. I'm Marechal Remy Delongname of the East Kingdom. My fencing unit is the Carolingian Calivers Company. We're from a Baronia unit from the Barony of Carolingia, so that's the Boston, Massachusetts area. I am the captain and like one of the founders of the group. I actually haven't done a lot of commanding for them at Penzic because I just been on like the Kingdom command staff so long that like last year I actually got a chance to like just roll around with the unit and it was great. It was actually nice to kind of just run around with my unit for a few minutes and stuff, so.
All right, and now that we're done talking about running around with your unit out, let's jump over to Malie and Seamus.
I'm Malie Rennick of Lion's Gate. We're members of the Kingdom of Ontir. This is my husband, Seamus McKinneach. We are part of the ship Drakkar. We also are part of the Barony of Lion's Gate, which is kind of one and the same thing in a lot of ways on the rapier field.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, we're probably mostly functional as a Baronia unit, although with the family expanding, I think we're looking for a war to come to us that we can bring everybody to. But I'd say mostly baronial for now.
Okay, fabulous. I'm gonna now jump over to, last but not least, Laetres.
Hi, so I'm Laetres McBride. I'm out here in Caid, and my unit, well, I won't tell you what I call my unit, but our fighting unit is the Portos. It's basically House Porto and a couple of other smaller households that we put together. We're the better known offspring of House Porto, which is in Onstiora. Basically, Contessa Batista and I and Don Esteban moved out here and kind of started the West Coast edition of it. And my role in it is just whatever's needed at the time. Usually we put in command of the unit, the youngest member, just so they get the experience because we're all old farts. And that's pretty much it.
It sounds super terrifying for that youngest person, but nothing like a trial by fire. Okay, so it sounds like we have kind of a range here from baronial to straight up household and everything in between. So I'm gonna give you guys the icebreaker real quick. It's gonna be a lightning round, so if you can keep it to like a sentence or maybe a paragraph, because we all like to talk here, that'd be awesome. But the question I'm gonna ask you guys is, what does melee look like in your kingdom? Preferably the kingdom that your unit is from. Oh my God. I'll make it through tonight, I promise. All right, and I'm going to start with Malie and Seamus.
Okay. Well, it's funny. Of course, we're in we're in Ontir. If you go south, I think maybe you get a little bit more of the larger war. They've got Ontir West War that us being the north, we haven't actually made it down to yet as a target. But no, this year was also supposed to be a big anniversary of Quad War, which is heading east from Canada. Obviously, that didn't happen either. Locally, though, I think we're a lot more baronial versus baronial. We had the principality to our east become a kingdom, and that the event unfortunately went away. So at this point in our, let's say, the north half of the kingdom, we're mostly just baronial.
Okay, that's perfectly legitimate. We see a lot of the new ideas from melee coming from the areas where it is smaller wars, because it's easier to get the logistics moving. So I can't wait to pick your brains a little bit more about how the unit formed and what its current function on the melee field is. So can't wait to get back to you. Next up, I'm going to ask Mara, what is melee like in your kingdom?
Melee is Penzik. I feel like that's the answer. So it's finding where you fit or where your unit fits within a huge, large vision that you may never actually get to see the whole picture of.
That's absolutely fair. So when you first said it's Penzik, and I'm sure Remy will touch on this, what does that mean? Is melee only in preparation for Penzik?
Depends on where you're at. Where my unit is out of in the Midrealm, we actually keep a melee practice going year round. But I can't say the same for everywhere. Most of the drive to practice melee is going out to Penzik, although there is a contingent of us that still go down to Gulf Wars. So most of our melee prep, melee practice, and melee focus is on the two large wars.
Perfect. Thank you. And now I'm going to jump to the opposing side of Penzik. For everyone's reference, if you're newer to the SCA or just from a smaller kingdom that doesn't Penzik, Penzik is 250 on each side, give or take. Usually a little closer to about 175, 150 rapier fighters and a war. And it's a lot of logistical horror. Oh, I mean, logistical problems and solving. Remy, from the east, what does melee look like in your kingdom?
Yeah, so the east is like really a mix of baronial units and then like household units. Like our southern region of our kingdom is a lot more household, so different people from different areas all kind of fighting together. In terms of like our like melee culture and stuff, a lot of it is in some ways in prep of Penzik, even if it's not directly. Like we'll do a lot of regional practices, but we'll do classes, and some of that will include melee practice, and we'll do like big melees on sides and work on scenarios. Even if it's not like this is the Penzik scenario we're working on, it's still kind of prepping for things we might run into there and stuff. So there's that, and we also do a lot of melees at events. We kind of have like little tryouts for our champs team, both for our singles and our melee team. So it gives like fencers from like new fencers to people that have been around for decades a chance to kind of show where they're at each year and stuff, which is kind of good. And it gets everyone working together. So people are not just getting used to just working with just their own units, but people from like 2-3 states away, which is kind of nice.
Neat. All right, and I'm going to jump over last but not least to Laetres again. So what does melee look like in your kingdom?
So melee in Caid, Most of the units are either based on households or geopolitical units. It really is a pretty good mix. The main events for Melee out here, there's Great Western War. That's usually in October. Not anywhere near the scale of Pennsic, of course. And then we have an intra-kingdom event for which happens every May, except for this year, which is down in San Diego. And that's probably the largest intra-kingdom event, where it's just us getting together and the units fighting together. And then we have what's called Angels Melee in January, which normally kicks off the fighting event season for us. And that is basically just a bunch of units and a bunch of odd scenarios. That's where a lot of testing really happens. The May Potrero War is, they do a little experimenting, but it's mainly the more standard stuff. And Estrella War used to be a big event for us to go out to in Aitenveld. And then we realized it was in Aitenveld and stopped going. But that's kind of fallen apart over the years as much on a kingdom involvement. We still kind of go out there, but it is not a main focus as it used to be.
Very cool. I can't wait to pick your brain a little more too, because that's kind of a wide variety from Great Western to Potrero to talking a little bit and touching on Estrella. So that's going to be awesome. All right. So now that we've all kind of broken the ice and we've heard a little bit from two large primary kingdoms from Pennsic to all the way over on the West Coast, I want to jump in to a little bit of an overview of your unit. And now that we've talked a little bit about Melee in your kingdom and what it looks like, what is the history of your unit? How did it form? And what is it known for on the battlefield? I'm going to jump to Remy first on this one. So you touched on the fact that this is a baronial unit, but you also get to play with people from 2 or 3 states away. So tell me a little bit about how the Carolingian Calivers were formed.
Sure. So when I first started, we would be at events. When I first joined the SA, we had events, and we'd have like melees, and it was pretty much, hey, just make a team, and that's who you're gonna fight with. And we were like my barony was basically the last kids being picked in dodgeball. Everyone else to get picked. I look around, and it's everyone from our practice. And we'd get our butts kicked because a lot of us were new, we weren't very good, that kind of stuff. So I just kind of decided, and along with my buddy Duncan, who he doesn't play in the SCA anymore, but he was one of the other fellows to help me create the Calivers. We basically decided if we were going to fight together by default anyways at these events, we might as well create a unit and actually start practicing together. So maybe we can at least give people a bit of a fighting, go down fighting it as it were and stuff. And at the time, there was like 12 of us. I think we just had like 2 AOAs between the 12 of us. It's like 8, 9, 10 years later, we have like 4 or so mods, a whole bunch of ogres, which is our white scarf equivalent. And we have like 25 fencing members, most of which are from Carolingian. We have like 2 people that are outside the barony. But so like, it's been a fun and wild ride from like just where we started and where we're at now. And we kind of just were like, we'll do whatever people tell us to do. Like, you want us to sit on a hay bale and just stare at a flag for the entire war point, we're fine. If you want us to go chase Wistric around, sure, we'll do that too. That sounds like a great old time.
Damn it, Remy. So you've just jumped to like a whole section of questions I have written out about compositions and what happens.
Sorry.
But so just so the other panelists know, I will be asking that question later, but I'm going to delve a little deeper with Remy for a second so you have a little bit of a better idea of what I'm looking for since he skipped ahead on the homework.
Sorry.
How dare you? I will kill you next Pennsic. Yeah. So how old would you say the Carolingian Calivers as a unit are? Like, when was that last kids at dodgeball moment to being a cohesive group?
Yeah, about 8 years ago, because I remember we're at Beltane's, not Beltane, sorry, Belfar's Challenge, which is an event in Connecticut. It's usually like 3-on-3 melees, and then like after we did like some bigger group stuff. So that was the point where I looked around and realized everyone that didn't get picked was from my practice. So we maybe we should actually work together.
All right. And so how many people were there that first, like that from the beginning? Like how small was the unit and how big has it grown?
Yeah, we just had 12 fencers at the time. All of us were in the barony. So yeah, we had 12 people, and then like over the years with some good recruitment, just like for our regular practice, because we just basically recruit from our practice since we're a baronial unit and stuff. We've grown a lot over the years and stuff. So now we're up to like 25 fencers or so, give or take, different varying levels of activity level and stuff. But I say about 20 of us are probably active regularly, and then another 5 come and go in waves.
Fabulous. All right, so now I'm going to jump to some of the other panelists and touch on those things a little more. Thank you, Remy.
Yeah.
I'll be back. All right, so jumping over to Malie and Seamus of Ship Drakkar. You heard what I asked Remy, so I'm going to ask it from you as well. We've talked a little bit about what melee looks like in your kingdom. Tell us the history of how your unit formed and what it looked like then and where it's at now.
Well, it was a sunny day in the summer. No, I guess for us, we were going to Clinton War and you know, saw what was happening up the field, and you know, it was a pretty considerably big war for the area, and said that's the sort of thing we want to do when we watch. And when we came back to Lionsgate and sought out the practice, it turned out that a couple of jokers there were the ones we'd been watching out there. And so what really just happened is getting involved with the baronial practice got us working with these same people. That would be Master Warwick, who's then not even a white scarf. So we're going back 12 years now, 13 years.
13 years
So,
in September.
For us, it was really just getting involved with practice first and foremost. And then I don't want to jump too far ahead here either, but a focus, because these were people that had been going to the war, and this was pretty much one of the premier events for our area, that was a focus. And, you know, even going forward through that, we just continually would run springtime melee practice because it was time to get ready for war season. So for us, that was the start of it. The family's grown, you know, white stars have become mods and more people join the family. And of course, we've always had an embarrassment of riches for really great teachers at our practice. You know, Warwick is hardly the only white scarf mod that was there. So we've had, you know, I think Guido is here, Master Guido. We've had a bunch of other ones too. And so it's just become the sort of thing where lots of great teachers. And then when it came down to war practice, it was like, okay, come on guys, we're gonna run this. So that was really just
So to touch on that, you said that Warwick wasn't even a white scarf. Was there anybody of like renown at the practice, or was it kind of that same phenomenon of a bunch of scrubs getting together?
Yeah, it wasn't all that way. I mean, there were other white scarves there. I mean, Guido's been there for as long as we've been coming, and we had some of them have moved on and retired or passed on, et cetera, but we've always been lucky to have a pretty strong leadership there. They weren't all interested in melee. Everybody's got their favorites, but Warwick was undoubtedly, and Callan, who's got the Callan with them, were undoubtedly very hungry for war. So that was definitely, they were the drivers, I think, as I recall, for getting that sort of, you know, the war versus the tournament stuff. It's like, okay, this is our time now.
All right, so one last follow-up question for you. How small was the unit at that time, and how large is it now? Or has it stayed kind of the same?
It's a funny question because I think war has changed in our kingdom, or at least in our part of the kingdom. I would say some of the best wars have been behind us locally, and we're having to travel more to find the big ones. So then, you know, it was, the core of our practice may have been the people we saw on the field that were directing things, but as that's changed, it's been more of an attempt to get, you know, everybody on board in our practice. Is really all we could do at the time. Mm-hmm. And that served us well in the baronial wars, going against Seager. You know, there was always back and forth with that. There have been other events that are not really locked to geographic areas. Just like, come on, let's have war. We've got ducal war. We've had tournament of armies, and those are different formats that don't necessarily lock you into your barony. But I think that's probably, in that way, it's almost gone down to a squad-based thing more than some of the big field wars we've had. And I mean, personally, I'm a big fan of squad-based scenarios and combat. I don't, again, I would love to chat with Worf about that on the previous panel, but squad-based for us is fine. It's just sort of the way things are locally now, and we have to travel for bigger wars.
And numbers-wise, honestly, it's been a core group of 10 to 15 people the whole time. We've had lulls, we've had dips, but we're about that amount of humans right now. And when we started, we were about that amount of humans on the Malie field. The practice was technically larger at that time, but there was a lot more in and out.
Okay, no, and that's a perfect.
I totally went there. Of course I went there. Molly doesn't have an inside voice.
In and out. Okay.
I can appreciate that. I know a few ladies, really strong ladies with no inside voices.
We like people who don't have inside voices.
Yeah.
It does not feel alone.
Nope. All right, I'm gonna jump over to Laetres now since I've made him talk last both times in a row. So you're not last this time. So the question I have for you, what's the history of your unit? How old is your unit? And how big is your unit?
Well, I do want to say part of the philosophy is it's really not the size of your unit, but how well you can use the unit when you engage. So I think that's a very good philosophy to keep in mind. And I just want to remind you that you invited me to talk tonight. So yes, we started the household. Actually, I came into a household that was just starting in Onsteora with Don Miguel, who's now Duke Miguel, and Esteban over in Onsteora, and with Condessa Batista. We kind of went to the same event. We rode to the same event together. And through the time, we started building up the household. And of course, then we split off and moved out here to California. And during that time, out here in Caid, it was kind of the third phase of Rapier Combat out here. They had 2 programs in the past that kind of fell apart. And it was through the hard work of a lot of people out here, they were getting it back off the ground and getting engaged. And we brought a lot of experience that I hadn't necessarily seen during that time. The members of my household are sending me other quotes to say on the air, by the way, if I get distracted.
They're helping. No, that's not even helping. That's helping.
And so we started with the core members of who moved out here, and then we reached out and developed a relationship with a couple of other households. And we took these 3 disparate households and made one big fighting unit. At that time, I moved into the kingdom as a white scarf, and everyone else was either was AOA or not recognized. And through that time now, there's about, if you get all of us together, there's about 10 of us here on the West Coast. And there's a countess. Everyone has at least a grant level award, if not a member of the Order of Defense. And we're all old farts more than anything else. It kind of has come, I forget what's the last part of the question. I got kind of distracted.
How many of you are there? And how many there were you?
We started with 3. One kind of retired from the SCA, and we're about up to 10. We filled probably around 8. But you have to remember that as a community here in Caid, we filled normally about 40 to 60 fighters when everyone comes out and does melee. So we're not a huge community anyway. So, and we've been together such a long time that we don't practice that much together.
Wait, no, wait.
But I'm not going to talk about that yet because I want to just tease.
No, you are.
That's just a tease, right? So I'm just teasing the unit right now. So
everyone wants to talk about their unit. All right, I'm gonna stop you there.
Every unit will get a full examination.
I will come back to you. All right, I'm gonna jump over to Mara for this last bit and ask her about how her unit began and the size of her unit. So Mara, will you tell me a little bit about Bledco?
So I actually wasn't around for when Wednesday Company started, so I use this opportunity as the last person to talk to PM someone who is a founding member who happens to be watching right now. So Wednesday Company started in 2007, roughly, with about 6 people, and they seem like, if the stories are true, they basically had a love of melee. Also had a feature where they had someone who had military experience help teach them melee, and they rolled out to the first couple events and just steamrolled people looking like a bunch of scrubs with really pretty half cloaks. So we started out with about 6 people. I joined in 2013-ish. We usually have anywhere between 6 to 7 regularly active combatants. People fade in and fade out. There's probably closer to 15-ish, 16, 17, something like that, people in the group. It is a total, but not all of them fight. Some Penzics, we only field like 3 or 4. So we're a little unique in that we are in a large melee-focused kingdom, but we are one of the smaller units out there. But to quote, I think it was Laetres making jokes about it's not the size of the unit that counts. So that's Wedco.
Perfect. All right, so this is going to be the lightning round, and I'm going to jump off of something that Mara just said, which is really pretty half cloaks. So 1 sentence answers, please. And I'm going to jump from person to person. How do people know it's your unit on the field? What is your unit's identifying mark? If you have one, you can say we don't have one. That is absolutely fine. And I'm going to start with Mara, since she outed Wedco with their pretty half cloaks.
So we have a black and gold checkered half cloak with a red backing, and we all wear that.
Perfect. I'm going to jump to Laertes.
Yeah, well, I have a handy visual aid. We have black and gold tabards with our household device on it, and this was just so you know, this is on sale at Estrella based on a picture they took of me and the Princess of the Outlands at the time. So, if you'd like an autographed T-shirt, please let me know in the chat.
Like
$20, cheap.
Like and subscribe. All right, and I'm going to jump over to Malie and Seamus. What are your units' identifying marks?
Have you seen me?
I mean,
Really
you are
like-
fabulous.
And we're like the only ones out there.
Also that.
And we all have Oryx collar. No, but seriously though, we don't have any outfit identifying marks. We're just pretty much Baronia practice.
That's absolutely fine. Some of us are very vain, but you guys look fabulous, so I can't say anything. All right, jumping over to Remy.
We have blue cassocks with gold lining, and then our Baronia unit badge on the chest.
Yep. I've seen that. I didn't like seeing that running at me. All right. Okay, so I think the next kind of question we want to ask is something that Remy has already touched on, so you get to go first and just be brief since you've already kind of touched on it. Who and now what is in your unit? What did your unit look like when it first started? What's the composition now when it comes to heavy hitters or AOA level or last kids picked at a dodgeball match? And who's the most, I'll use that as my lightning round, never mind. So what does your unit look like when it started? What does it look like now? Go.
Sure. So when we started, we just had like 12 or so fencers. We had just 2 AOAs. The rest of us were relatively new. So we didn't have any awards at all, let alone any kind of fencing awards. And now, like I said, there's like around 20-25 of us. We have about 4 mods, a handful of grant levels, and then we have a bunch of other people that have their AOAs or silver level awards, which for us is like just below our grant level. So we've kind of come a long way from a bunch of nobodies.
So no longer noobs. No longer
the noobs.
All right, I'm gonna jump over to Laertes next. What did your unit look like when it started, and what does it look like now?
I'm gonna let everyone fill in the blank for a second, and then I'll give the real answer. Like I said, when we first started, I'll just focus here in Caid. Oh, if you look at Batista's and Ariok's pictures, those are our tabards, by the way. And that's Keurig. It really was a couple of, well, 3 imports that moved in. We reached out with people with similar mindsets and interests and personalities that for some reason enjoy being with us, and kind of built from then. We don't actively recruit per se, but we do kind of, with people that gravitate toward us and we work well with as friends. It's more important really to be friends than like a kick-ass fighter, to be honest. We look for people that can deal with the variety of personalities we have. Again, I'm just giving a preview of another question that Bruce is going to ask in a little bit.
I know. We shouldn't slip you the questions. Like, you're one of the people we should not have prepared. You and Remy both are on the
I don't remember the questions, though. I looked at it like real briefly. That's the problem.
We planned them.
We'll have you both back for the one where we're like, we're not even telling you what the episode is about.
We're just going to get really drunk and talk. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Oh, that's between 2 peers. That's a different show.
All right. I'm jumping. Oh my God. I'm jumping over to Malie and Seamus now. What was the composition of your unit? Oh my God, I can't do it. What was the composition of your unit back in the day, and what does it look like now? You already kind of touched on it with before Warwick was even a White Scar, but I can't wait to hear your answer.
We were a bunch of proto-pirates, honestly.
You're going too far back now.
Really far back. It was, I mean, our practice did have a couple of White Scarves at the time who have since stopped playing and are doing other things. We primarily had a bunch of newer fighters. We were comprised of what we used to call the Amazon Shield Wall. It was myself and 4 other ladies in a shield wall, and we ruined people. But we were all just kind of running around in there for the drinking and the wenching and the no shit there I was stories. Now we're still doing that, but we got a lot more MODs involved with us. Warwick himself. We have another kind of tangential family member / member of the barony who is one of the better master of defenses I've ever encountered. Plus, most of the rest of us have grant level awards, AOAs, and not just grant level awards in fighting. We've got, you know, folks who do arts and sciences. We've got folks who do service. We really do comprise a wide range of humans in the SCA, and it's really, really excellent. And the friend aspect is the critical part. You started it.
Blame Laetres, blame Remy, blame all of them. It's all their fault. All right, I'm jumping over to Mara now. And I know that you came in kind of the middle of the founding of the unit.
Well, I'm PMing Vindus for answers, don't worry.
But what did the unit look like initially, other than looking kind of scrubby with super duper fancy half cloaks, versus what does it look like now?
So making sure I don't answer something incorrectly. Are you wanting award composition or type of fighter composition?
No, I'm looking for award. We're going to touch on roles on the field.
Okay, cool. Wanted to clarify because I registered that in 2 different ways. So award-wise, out of the 6 people that started, they had maybe 2 AOAs. Like, no, really, these were like utter nobodies that rolled out and started murdering people. And now, if you're counting everyone, even including emeritus members, there's 4 MODs, 2 Pelicans. I don't really know how many warders. There's more warders than non-warders at this point. Warders is the GOA award for rapier in the Midrealm, because Midrealm. And yeah, that's basically where we're at.
So basically, from what I'm hearing from just about every panelist, is it went from scrubby as hell, except for Laertes, but he's special, went scrubby as hell to super legitimate. So I think we have a theme here, Wistric.
You mean like so many of the high-profile, successful units out there started as the kids who got picked last at dodgeball and wanted to kick ass, and in so doing have gained renown, fame, skill, and become the dominant voices in their rapier communities?
It's almost like Melee is awesome. Okay, so the lightning round question for everyone. And I am going to try to deliver this with a straight face, but I didn't even realize I had written a horrible pun.
Until I pointed it out.
Pointed it out. So, lightning round, one sentence answer. Who is your most infamous or famous? Doesn't have to, doesn't, there's no line there. Who is your most famous member, whether it's for good or bad, and why? And I'm gonna start with Remy.
I don't fucking know. I don't know
like,
what our.
I can't name myself. That would not be
I have no clue. No idea. No idea.
I didn't even say other than yourself. You could be like, I am the most infamous member. Have you seen my fancy hat? Like,
I'm gonna say. So he's more. So he doesn't fight with us a ton, but I'm gonna go with this one anyways. It's a little bit of a cop out.
Oh, there's a suggestion in the chat.
I'm not gonna pick loopholes. Fuck that guy. No, I'm just kidding. I love loopholes. I'm gonna go with Duke Brennan because he's a Duke, and he was at Pentic twice, so people are gonna probably recognize him before they're gonna recognize anyone else in the unit. And he's like our only non-local member.
I was about to say he lives in Jersey.
Yeah,
we're not from Jersey with that accent.
Yeah, so he when he was on the sorry, that was a little bit long. When he was on the throne, he like made us his like royal fencing unit for like his 2 times on the throne. So we kind of adopted him because of that.
You know what? That's a perfectly adequate answer. I'm going to jump over to Laetres. Who is your most famous or infamous member, and why?
Well, I'm going to say it's me, obviously, because I'm the only one that's on a T-shirt. It's tough because of just who we are. I mean, I was Society Rapier Marshal for 4 years, so more people probably know me from that. But Batista has a good reputation for. Well, she has a reputation that everyone knows. And then we have a Duke and Duchess that just moved to Outland. So it's really tough to zero in on one, I would say. I think we have all contributed in different ways to the reputation that our unit has.
And that's an answer in itself. The inability to identify one person, it says something about your unit. I mean, we've heard that from Remy now, we've heard that from you now. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't name your infamous person, because I want those good stories to Moira and Malie and Seamus. But I just wanted to point out that we're seeing kind of a pattern. All right, I'm gonna jump over to Moira. Moira, who's the most infamous or famous member in your unit and why?
It's really hard. Because like the same thing, like I guess Laetres ran into, a lot of us have done really awesome stuff and have found like known world renown, but I think I'm gonna go with Master Peter Grau von Bremen because he's the first of us to be a double peer. He was one of the premiers of the MOD for Midrealm, and he was the idiot that decided being a Pentic general and being a King's champion was a good idea.
Wouldn't know anything about making stupid decisions like that.
Oh,
that poor man. That poor man. That explains the mustache. He had to like grow it with his terror and horror.
It's an image. All about image.
All right, I'm
it's
gonna
a
jump.
brand.
There we go.
Ooh, wow. We shouldn't tell him. He's got people helping him with his image here, especially on a chat about units and members. Now to jump over to Malie and Seamus. Who is your most infamous or famous member and why?
Yeah, sorry, we just lost you there for a second. All right. Well, it's a family unit, and you probably know we're just gonna have to say Warwick. He's our mod. He's the guy who travels. He's the guy who puts on every piece of kit and goes off the archery field and war field and the rapier field and everything. So I think he's got a giant bag of hats. He's the man.
He's the guy who's been on 2 episodes already, which is why we didn't put him on this one. Why we wanted to hear from like anybody else.
But really, he travels more than any of us. So one day we'll go with him.
You guys did dress fancier though.
Yeah, we're
Warwicks. We're also Canadian. Maybe
I
didn't
think
get
you
the
wore a
memo.
tank
I don't
top.
know.
We made him put on a tank top.
Yeah.
for the episode.
You're just lucky he had pants on. He's got no problem with the tank top.
All right. Also, yes, chat, I also thought a giant bag of hats was going in a totally different direction. I think I'm 12. There's a possibility. All right. So the next kind of thing we want to touch on, since this has been actually very insightful, talking about how a lot of units form from a bunch of people who want to get better and have actually gotten better over the years. So we want to talk a little bit about the role of the unit on the field and how they succeed in doing their jobs. What do you guys do outside of events? How frequently do you train? But I think I want to go through all of the panelists first and ask a little bit more about what their unit is known for on the melee field, whether it's composition of fighters or the ability to take any flags or kill pockets. What do you guys do well? What does your overall commander, if you have one, if you're a large war kingdom like the East or the Mid, what can they trust you with? And even if you're not, what job does your unit want to do when it is on the melee field? What do you guys excel at? I'm gonna start with Laetres on this one.
What do we excel at? Well, basically the thrust of the conversation. What does our unit excel at? So we are kind of a pretty well balanced unit and one of the more experienced ones out there. We kind of plug into any gaps that are needed. We're more fire and forget. Yeah, you can tell the puns I'm trying to work into every single one of these. But don't get me started about the backfield. But basically, we take a certain position on the line every time, and it's kind of, we incorporate the greater philosophy of the full army, where we have kind of our strengths, whether it's commanding a rogue, whether we're the hammer or the anvil, and maneuvers and such, and we work together in that aspect. So we work towards the greater goal, and it really depends on the scenario. If it's a resurrection at time over an hour, we more often than not split up and help support some of the other units that need assistance. And then when we're working toward a common goal, we'll reform at specific times during the engagement.
Okay, Countess Batista said in the chat that you screw up scenarios.
Okay, so that's a separate thing. That's me. I personally, I break scenarios because I've written so many. I take the joy in finding the logic problems with them and taking advantage of it. But yeah, they usually, when we have more scripted scenarios, they give them to me so I can show them how we can break them. But yeah, I mean, we are kind of like general support, fire and forget kind of unit. And we more often than not, unless there is a specific need for us to fight as one big unit, we will split up in little subunits and help support and achieve the greater good.
How long did it take your unit to be fire and forget?
Gosh, you know, when we moved in and first started, the three of us had been fighting together already for 5 years. So when we started pulling in the different households, they had already been working together a bit, because Fallen Oaks, which we brought in like 3 or 4 different people, they were Oxnard, Ventura area, and they'd been fighting together for a few years. And the Slugs household had been together. So they all knew each other. It was just a matter of the repetition of getting together and plugging together. And one of the things, okay, so I'll talk about it. So I was the first rapier commander out here in Caid. And I got together with the leaders in the community and came up with a bunch of different philosophy and a schedule for training and getting us ready to when we returned to Australia when it became the 4 principal kingdoms set up. So we worked together several different regional practices to build the concepts and principles that the army was built on. So we, since I was the general at the time, my household went to most of them. So we had a good opportunity to work together at each one whilst we were building and training the individual units that have evolved and grown over the years in the kingdom. So that's kind of where we kind of cut our teeth together as individual households as one big unit.
Understood. And hearing the perspective from someone who knows that we have worked together for this many years and this is why we can do this is very helpful, which is kind of why I wanted your gauge on when you became Fire and Forget, which for the chat, for anyone just tuning in who hasn't had a lot of experience with Melee, Fire and Forget is that group of people or that person you know will complete a job. You can point in a direction, say, I've got a gap I need you to punch, or I need you to mind that over there. And they'll do it without you having to command them or really babysit is a very bad term for it, but babysit. You know they'll get that job done. So I'm going to jump over to Malie and Seamus next and ask the same question. What is your unit's role on the field and what do you excel at and how long did it take you guys to get there?
Well, I can almost pick up exactly from what you were just saying. I mean, again, when we started out, there were bigger wars. There were other squads on the field. We had people out there in matching uniforms, and we're like, what are we doing out here? But as we went, I think probably the two things we've really come out as being for us is we are loud. We make sure that when we get out there, everything is heard. We found communication is such a big part of being on the war and successful, you know, having success out there. But I also find that a lot of times if it's us showing up at a war locally, it's up to us to take in the stragglers because there are no other second, third, fourth squads around there. It's like Robin said, you know, we'll end up with mods that aren't part of our family, but we're all together in this war. So come on over here and here's what we're doing. So it's kind of more like a unifying center to whatever our forces may be at this particular event or in this particular scenario. I think that's really key is you got to be able to grab the people that don't necessarily have any intention other than just get out there on the field with the sword and say, come on over here, this is what we're doing. So, and that's part of why we're here, I think, too, is because it's not work that gets out there and takes control of it. He's always made sure each and every one of us can get out there. And we've even practiced that at drills. It's like, okay, you're the leader today. So you're in total command. Nobody's doing anything unless you make sure you tell them that what's happening, you know. And it's a great exercise to make sure that you are loud, that you are heard. We all know how crazy it gets out there when you got helmets on and stuff's clanging. So I think those are probably the big things. If we can't be heard out in that field, then we're all just running around like cats with swords, right?
Yep. So you guys are basically the party amoeba of the field, is what I'm hearing.
That is an excellent way of looking at it.
So we actually have a question from the chat for you guys in particular. How much of a factor, if at all, are things like uniforms and flags? And I think this is actually kind of a good question for you since you're the one unit who doesn't have like a household tabard or whatever. How much of a factor is that for you? Or is there, you just mentioned you were loud, are there other ways to work around that?
I think that it's less of a factor, partially because the barony just doesn't have anything like that. And as the family, we don't need anything like that. But we, the communication and the vocal factor of it is the critical part. You know, you're going to know when I'm on the field and you're going to know what I'm saying because I make sure of it.
Yeah, I think our community pretty much knows everybody out there too. I can't see this being anything like showing up at a Gulf Wars where you really don't know. You know who's on the other team with us because, you know, the community is somewhat smaller. So, I mean, I love the pageantry.
You should all come to Gulf Wars.
We would love to. It's part of the plans eventually.
Soon, yeah. But I mean, the TOA event had entire parts of that done with pageantry coming out with your war band. So it's not that that's unheard of out here. It's just that an identity like that for our household and for the Lionsgate practice doesn't really happen quite that way.
It's less sartorial and more reputation.
Understood. Excellent. And I think that was really the perfect question for you guys, because I know Wedco and I know the Calivers personally, and they're kind of loud on the field with their clothes as well.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If somebody goes to work and says, "Hey, I got the stuff to get your guys decked out in black leather and black silk," and he'd be on there like that. Like we'd be dressed before we knew what was going on.
All right, I'm
On the
gonna
other
jump.
hand, like I say, I grew up in the SCA in Atlantia, and you can't get Atlantia to wear a uniform because clothes.
You guys all wear the same uniform anyway. Slap a spike on it and it's blue.
Hey, reduce the armor.
Yes,
requirement.
those guys do. I'm not in Atlantia anymore. I'm contractually obligated to say that.
All right, I apologize,
Player
Malie.
raises his hand, keeps going up.
Honestly, just a little thing on that. We found, since we all wear tabards, all the same, that people can't tell us apart. So even when our newer members go out to engage the line, the opponents that know us don't know who it necessarily is for sure. So they treat us all as, oh crap, it's one of them, as opposed to the individual that may be standing in front of them. And we see it a lot, that we'll stop and advance just one of us, even if it is one of the newer fighters. So it's active camouflage. So.
Yeah, I actually have to agree with Wistric in the chat, the marshalling issue with the fashion tabards.
Like, having never marshaled an event that your unit was at, I can't say, but with other units, it becomes an issue where, you know, who hit you hard? Well, they were wearing blank.
The other ones that are all
They were
dressed
wearing a mid-realm tabard. Sorry, more. But yeah, it has like the benefits, but also marshals kind of get cranky about that.
There's the rapier fighter in black with the tabard. Okay, that narrows it down like half.
Hey, he had a drape. He had a drape and 2 swords. All right. Sorry, I'm gonna jump on to Mara next, and I'm gonna ask you the same thing I've asked everyone else. Now that you've had plenty of time to think on it, and ask Vindus in the chat. What is the unit's current role on the rapier field, and how did you get there? How long did it take?
I think current role, since I just stepped down as a general, so like, and doing the command thing and whatever, the current role that I would stick Wednesday Company into is problem solvers. Because we function at a level where if you point us at a direction, we will identify what is going on and deal with it accordingly. Like, you don't need to you just point us in a direction, we'll probably figure it out. They started out, like all 6 of them, they were actually a pretty even mix of people that both like to do the skirmish / fire and forget thing, as well as the the people that stay back or stayed in the line and commanded from the rear or yelled from the rear, whichever. And we've kind of maintained that. However, what we also have is that even though about half of us prefer the skirmishing and fire and forget, when asked or when they know that it's needed, you can still pull them back into a static fight and they will be reliable there as opposed to see something shiny and go kill it.
Yeah, Growl in the chat, you only had to tie a rope to one of us, and it wasn't just one rope. It was also a couple of us scruffing you all. That's okay. Neither here nor there.
There's actually a story behind that comment. There was a
Oh, sorry. Go.
There was a founding member who was convinced that he didn't run off and just kill anything. So another founding member who had about half of his size on him, it's like, oh yeah, let's prove it. Tied a rope to their belts during a melee practice and got to watch Warder Miguel go boing, 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 boing while he was trying to do the fire and forget thing that he didn't ever do.
Nope. Never would have done that. How long did it take the unit to become the problem solvers, the fire and forget?
I didn't ask Vindus that, so I'm going to BS this and probably get told otherwise. Back to, okay, so Vindus said 6 months, which is about what I was going to guess.
Wow.
So they started well, one of the founding members, they all had a really good like senses of like evaluating the field going in, and one of them did have the actual military experience and training, and they utilized that a lot at the beginning.
Okay, understood. And that actually, that harkens back to a discussion I've had earlier this week about how our real life experiences sometimes come into play in the SCA and you can't really forget them. And we will touch on that with my next round of questions, I promise. That is, but for everyone in the panel right now, that is an incredibly fast time period, especially as we talk a little bit more about developing training, developing standardization, developing esprit de corps or friendships to allow you to know how to interact. We've heard ranges from now 6 months to 8 years. So I'm gonna move over to Remy and I'm gonna ask him the same question, and I'll be back to you, Mara. Be ready for a grilling.
Oh boy.
So Remy, what is your unit's role on the field? You kind of touched on it earlier, saying you do a little bit of everything. And how long did it take you guys to get there?
Yeah, so like I was saying, I kind of see us as like a jack of all trades unit, because we're a Baroni unit. We have all different kinds of fighters coming in, so we can't just be like, all right, we're only going to take the fast mobile people, so we can just be like fast skirmishers or flankers all the time. We're not going to just take people that want to just line fight or whatever. We have a mix of people that have a lot of different skills and qualities, so we try to utilize that as best we can. So we end up being really kind of a jack of all trades. We really kind of pride ourselves on being willing to take the non-glorious objectives and stuff, like take the bus to the face. Like it's going to be a meat grinder for this next hour and a half of melee. You're probably never going to get to the flag that the objection is, but you're going to draw off a lot more of the other opposing side's army so we can get the flags further down the field and stuff. So even if we might never get kind of like the glory of getting the flag, we know that we're helping the people like 15, 20, 30 yards down the field do what they need to do by drawing more bodies and stuff. So we really like doing stuff like that. We practice a lot on how to try to bust through kill pockets, because that's a meat grinder that's, some people might find it fun. It's a bit of a meat grinder, but it's a necessary evil with a lot of scenarios and stuff. But we also get used a lot on the flanks for like field battles and stuff. Especially if we get teamed up with like the Handsome Boys. It's a household out here in the East and stuff. They're a group of a bunch of loppers, so now we have a lot more mobile kind of fighters and stuff, which works really well. So.
Okay, yeah, no, and that's actually fascinating, because we've heard a lot of, as we've gotten more developed as a unit, we become more adept at doing more and more things. So it's really awesome to hear jack of all trades, and we run this through training. So I guess I'm gonna just ask my next question to you, since you already touched on it, and it kind of goes with that paragraph you just gave me. How frequently does your unit train outside of events? And how much standardization do you have with the rest of the kingdom and the melee culture in your kingdom as a whole? And how much is just unique to your barony?
Yeah, so we practice pretty regularly. Like when we first started, we practiced like every other week, like twice a month kind of thing, just to kind of try to get us up to a competent level to just hang with the rest of the kingdom and stuff. We don't practice as regularly now until like it gets to like the springtime, then we'll kind of gear up for Penzic and stuff. Well, like, so yeah, that's what we do in terms of our own unit practice. But like there's usually, we can actually meet up with people like regional practices every few months that we'll get to work with or against other units in the kingdom and stuff. And then like I said, like at events during the spring and the summertime, as we kind of gear up for Penzic and stuff, there's tons of melee at different events and stuff that we can really kind of practice against and with other people. There's not a ton of standardization between the holies. That's something that Keelan, who is going to be our general for Penzic this year, as you know, because you've been part of like some of those Tuesday night chats and stuff, try to kind of like standardize our languages and stuff. So like people from New Jersey and people from Maine and Boston are all using the same terms to mean the same thing, and not kind of get confused based on like local culture or dialects and all that kind of stuff. Because that's been a problem before at Penzic and stuff, especially when you use metaphors. Metaphors you think might be really useful, and sometimes they take in the complete opposite of how you meant that. So.
Wait. Things aren't standardized in the People's Republic of the East?
No.
What?
No. It's gotten better. That's the scary part. It's gotten so much better than when I first joined the SCA.
All right. Well, thank you for that answer. I'm going to jump over to Seamus and Malie, and I'm going to ask them the same question. What does your unit do outside of big war events and melee events, and how frequently do you train, and how much standardization is there, and or how weird is your unit?
Everything we do is outside the big wars. We're lacking. Someone bring a war.
I'm sorry, I'm from the
Big
mid-round. I only
relative
know
to
Penzic.
Yeah.
Big relative to the
Right now
Pacific
we have to go.
Northwest.
Sorry?
Big relative to the Pacific Northwest.
Well, that's just it. We have to travel for those wars. So I think what we're at is transitionally, when those wars were here and there was a big turnout, then it was all the practice. We had a great opportunity there to just fire up the war machine every spring. I know I mentioned that before, but that was ideal. We had a number of family members that were, it was off and on, but mostly on for a while there. We were running the practices as branch marshals and stuff. So it was just what we did. It's like, come on, folks, it's war season. Let's get going. Now I think it's just, I guess it's transitioning more to, with our mod and scholar provost family expanding, we have people all over the area now, all over the principality. And I think this would have been a good year. Unfortunately, of course, it didn't happen. This would have been a good year for us to grab these family members that aren't from our barony and take them on the road out to Quad War, out to somewhere. And, you know, we can look at that going forward, but I think this will be a pretty formative time for us to start going to some of the large events that have more than just local squad base, you know, 10, 15, 20 rapier fighters. It'd be nice to hit some bigger than that. So I think that'll change things for us. But, you know, at the same time, everything we've done to this point has been teaching people. I don't anticipate a big issue. We got good people in the family, and anybody else that would get in the motorhome with us and come on out, you know, I think we would find the time. We would definitely find the time outside those events to practice, because it's proven that, you know, if you put the time in and work on tactics before you hit the field, then you have success.
It's a lot less permit arms then.
So we actually have a question in the chat, since you guys, since you guys actually have spear and pike out there. Do you guys drill or do marching formation?
You know what's funny about that? There's a lot of pressure east of us in Avical to use the spear and stuff. We haven't been using it yet locally, and I mean, like I say, we're mostly the Greater Lionsgate area. I think between that and the size of our events, lending to a good squad-based thing, it's been all sword and just offensive, defensive secondaries. We use RBGs, but even the RBGs, I mean, I don't want to mention the Warwick Convention, but we call it the Warwick Convention because we limit shot just to keep it kind of sword-based. That's sort of the culture around here. We're happy to have guns and RBGs out there, but we don't. It's, you know, I think the White Scars and now the mods got tired of getting shot all the time, so.
Which is why he just chimed in with his 8 spears.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Who did?
Warwick apparently has 8 spears.
They're around, just culturally the practice hasn't been that eager to pick them up yet. We'll see how that changes.
All
Yeah.
right.
Fair and prerogative
Yeah,
is what he's
yeah.
doing. Yeah.
I see what he's saying.
Yeah, no, he said this last time too, and I cringed a little. Just the imagining of Penzic with spears just makes me go.
Yeah, it's a lot different if we were to go down to Gulf Wars or something.
Hey, we played with him at Gulf Wars a few years ago now.
Yeah,
That was so much fun.
2 years ago at our last war with Avical, they brought a bunch out and we got to try them as well. And I didn't have anything to say against them. They were definitely great, and it'd be interesting to see a melee out there. But it's just with what happens locally right now, it'd be kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. No, that's completely fair. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to jump over.
So,
oh, sorry.
So speaking of spears and Gulf Wars, and
No.
Hawk is in the audience, and so she can tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but
Some,
Kat is already, she is already screaming, no, 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 no. But I think in the past, last year, she brought spears into the Bad Ideas battle. And in the future, we may at least have spears in the Bad Idea battle. Not in War Points, but Bad Ideas. Because
Wow. Wow, she changed her mind fast.
Because
All right.
I know the rules I know the limits she has placed on me.
Good job, Hawk, for putting rules and limits on him. As he slowly tips forward in his chair with the unicorn horn.
Limits are important.
Especially
Thank you,
with
Hawk.
me.
All right, so I am going to jump over to Laetres next, and I want to ask the same question. How does your unit, or what does your unit do outside of events for training? How frequently do you train? You already kind of touched on this, so you can keep it as brief as you'd like. And how much standardization do you have with the melee community as a whole, and or how much is unique to your unit?
I would say my unit's very unique, but that's more than one question. I mean, anyway. Gosh. So our unit, I mean, we get together basically at the events where there's melee going on. Like I said, there's really three main ones in Kingdom. The one in January, we kind of more split up into our households instead of being one big cohesive unit, and we bring in unaffiliated fighters that don't necessarily have someone to sign up with, just so they can get a different experience. But if there are new members of our unit ourselves, we try to pair them up with some of the more experienced ones during that time. But again, since we're kind of built up from three different households, the households will get together at their local practices and kind of work together, and then we'll just kind of plug into each other on the fly at larger events. Mm-hmm. And again, we try to do a balanced approach and play to the strengths of the individuals and how it works together cohesively as the whole, to be flexible and not rigid, because our unit, it's not that rigid. And for overall in the Kingdom, the philosophy has been, and it's changed a bit over the years, but again, to be more flexible and respond to the scenario and the situation that is presented at that time, as opposed to some kingdoms I know that they are very rigid and task specific for the units. And just from my experience, that is limiting. And as every scenario can go sideways, once you call lay on, being flexible and adaptable to the ongoing situation on the field seems to be a strength rather than a weakness of having a highly focused and specifically trained unit.
Okay. And I have a follow-up for you, because you said something very interesting earlier, which was that you make your newest member command. Mm-hmm. How do you prepare them for that?
Oh, we don't.
You asshole.
Into the frying pan.
I mean, that's how I got started in command, Bruce.
I know, and you remember that feeling of abject terror just a little bit before going, okay, I make noise, I yell.
Here's the deal. I mean, with about the 8 active members, 4 of us have been the Kingdom commanders at some point. Not together, because that'd be weird. But yeah, so we have that experience, that perspective of not only your individual fight, your units fight, the armies fight, and adapting to the scenario. So the ability for the younger members to get that experience from building from the ground up and being able to give us guidance, you know, and we may give them suggestions based on the scenario, but really we want to empower them to gain that confidence, to read the field, give direction, and be able to rely on the people that they're giving assignments to do their job. So really that's what it's about. We don't expect them to go out there and kick ass, but we expect them to be able to read the field, adapt to the situation, and use the best tool in the job. Yes, I use tool talking about the unit. So that's really why we do it. It's like learning to swim. You throw them in the water and good luck. So.
Right. They might sink, they might not, and they have an entire unit full of members to back them up. No, all right. I'm gonna jump to Mara next, but I'm gonna actually come back to you, Laertes, for the next lightning round. Just based on something you said. All right, Mara, same question for you, and I know this might be a little bit weird with the mid-realm being as it is, but how frequently does Wedco train outside of melee events? And how much standardization do you have between what commands and what tactics Wedco is using versus what the kingdom is using, and how much is unique to Wedco?
So lots of background information with this one. So the Mid-Realm has 5 regions, and Wednesday Company, the majority of the members are in the region of Constellation, which is the state of Indiana. And throughout the year, unless there's a reason not to, most of the groups in Constellation have what's called a monthly throwdown, where it's actually a melee practice where like 3 or 4 groups will all converge on one central group, and they do pickups and such and single fights for the first half of practice, and the second half of practice is melee for rapier. So between that and the fact that almost all of Wedco just really loves melee, I don't think we really stop practicing throughout the entire year. We at least get 1 melee practice in a month, if not more. Usually more if we're already outside. So yeah, I don't think we really stop practicing melee, because we all just kind of love it because we're all a little crazy. As for standardized, there are some commands or some communications that are unique, but it's usually not something you would say to a group. It's something you would say to somebody next to you, like, I'm going to your whatever, or I'm letting the person know that you're about to do something stupid, something like that. But we've had at least three rapier generals and a ton of command staff in Wednesday Company. So a lot of what we do is already based on the norm for mid-realm. So we have like a little bit of Wedco specific communication, but most of what we do is based off of mid-realm norm.
Okay, yeah, no, and that's completely fair. And I know with Wedco, a lot of the former generals come from either Wedco or came from Wedco, so some of that overlap must help too.
And
wait, was this?
I was asking about
those
drills.
Started as scrubs that are now generals.
I mean, yes, we've had three, yeah. And there's someone asking about drills and such. Well, Bruce can probably describe it better than me, but last year for mid-realm, we might have done a lot of block formation drilling because I had a plan and I was a drill instructor for marching band.
I also have the outline from the war camps from last year, which I would be willing to scrub and share some of those drills on the Fighting the World page. I think I've been holding out. I'm sorry, Wistric.
Yeah,
I didn't.
We had an episode about training that had some mention of drills, and there was a post about add your favorite drills, games, whatever. So if you all go to the Fighting the World Facebook page, and there might be some useful stuff there, and if there's something that's not there that you know about, please add it. Thank you.
I mean, part of it was actually making people learn how to walk in a line all in a row next to each other. Yeah. That was entertaining because everyone starts off hating it and then realize how bad they are at it, and it's amazing.
You mentioned marching band. Was anybody else here in marching band? That's 4 out of 7 of us.
I think it talks about a very particular mindset and some ideas of masochism and spacing. But Wistric, I think we should talk about the possibility of another episode at some point about actual tactics. It'll be dry as hell and certain things that you can bring over from your mundane life into your fencing. That might also be applicable for tournament fighting, but I don't really care. It's not melee. All right, so
I'll make a note.
lightning round. I want my panelists to answer in one word, and I believe in you. I know you can do it. One word.
Okay.
The question I'm going to ask is a scalable question, so do your best. How important to the unit that you command and in their roles on the melee field and in their ability to grow has the camaraderie, friendship, and ability to get to know one another? How important has that been to the success of your unit? I am going to start with Remy, since I don't trust him to use one word.
Medium high.
Medium high? Is that hyphenated? All right. Next up, I'm going to ask Laetres.
Instrumental.
Instrumental, perfect. Next, I'm going to ask Mara.
Yes, you can use a sentence.
I'll only mock you for forever.
It's literally part of our company motto.
No, that's why that's where this question came from. So. I don't spill my sources. All right, and then last but not least, Malie and Seamus, and you get 2 words because I guess you each get a word.
Super.
Massive.
Super massive. All right. So the next, I'm gonna do this lightning round in 2 parts, and I guess I should have prefaced with that. But the next, I'm gonna ask for brief answers on what do you guys do outside of practices, not necessarily outside of the SCA, but outside of practices and events to help you build the esprit de corps. Wistric uses this phrase all the time, and I like it, but I don't know, it's too fancy. Too fancy for this. All right, and I'm gonna start again with Remy, because I asked for brief.
Okay.
And he can set the tone for everyone else.
Okay. We'll make things. We'll get together, we'll make our uniforms, our unit standard we made together, which is why it's really patchwork in terms of blocks. We made rubber band guns together and the ammo and stuff. So we like to get together and make things that kind of like help make the unit look a bit fancier.
How does that help you guys get to know each other? Is it just the time? Do you do fun things on top of that? Is that fun to your unit?
Yeah, I mean, it's quality time hanging out with each other outside of just like running drills and fighting each other. So you get to just talk. We'll put on some I'll put on some bad swashbuckling movies that we'll like laugh and joke about and stuff. So really just like you get to know everyone outside of fencing a little bit more. And just like it's good quality time. So like it's fun and you become more friends versus like this is my teammate and also one of my pals and stuff. So yeah.
How many of the Musketeer movies have you guys watched as a group?
Oh man. So maybe only a couple of them. I put on Jack of All Trades the first time. Which is not a Musketeer movie, but it's really good if anyone knows that show.
Are we gonna have to do an episode on movies?
Maybe. We were already planning an episode on movies. It's already in the folder. May the 4th. Don't you even.
Oh, okay.
All right. Next up, I'm gonna ask Malie and Seamus, since you're already on my screen.
We do, so I like to cook for people, like a lot. So yeah. I always do a family breakfast on Sundays of an event. We'll have everybody who's there come over to our encampment. I'll cook them pancakes and sausages or whatever gluten-free or vegetarian options that are required. And it's just a good chance to hang out and have coffee and no shit there I was, but you're not actually drinking, so the stories make sense.
That's an event though.
That's an event.
We're overdue for sure, but of course there's so many things to make. Like all the times we spent making rubber band shot. I saw somebody talking about the large shield to rapier combat. Yeah, we've all got a template for a family large rapier shields, which are like, the maximum silhouette size. So making those together, it's been too long, but those are all sorts of things we I think pretty good to do.
on top of just outside of events, barbecues and dinners and hanging out and birthday parties and just crazy crap. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's just something you can do when your friends outside the SCA as well as inside too.
Well, and
So,
considering
Do
that
you
it was
invite people to those meals before they're friends? Like if they kind of.
So if you come by my encampment with a cup and you need coffee,
You
I
get
have
coffee.
coffee. Just saying.
you're my new
Or
best
tea.
friend.
Yeah, those northwest wars.
They'll slip you a sausage whether you're ready for it or not.
I
Legitimate.
mean, this is an episode about members. I would have been
And units.
and units.
So you actually touch on one of those things that the society, Bruce gave me permission. The society is a social club, not a club where we dress up funny or not a club where we fight, but we're a social club. And I think the strength of the society is in, do you go out to eat after meetings? Do you go out to eat after practices? Do you, like, community, everywhere I've seen it built strongly, is in what you're talking about. Do you eat together? It's not do you practice together, it's do you eat together?
We used to do both. It used to always be chicken wings after practice.
And I think it goes to show that most of my SCA family, honestly, is as important, if not more important, than my actual blood family.
And so much of that relationship, so much of those ties are what make us good on the melee field. It's what makes a household. It's what makes a unit. In the end, you can put, sorry, so my side is I was in charge of Rapier Melee Champs last year for the mid-realm, and I burned a lot of bridges because I refused to put our hottest sticks on the field. I picked people I knew would work together. And if I had 3 people I knew would work together, I had to find the glue in the middle to go with the other 3 people to work together. And I stand by that, which is part of maybe why I included these questions here. So thank you guys so much for that insight. And it makes me very happy to hear how super massive and important that was to your guys' family. And then next up, I'm going to ask Laetres. How do you guys build that esprit de corps?
Oh, as a kingdom, we all like to get together and look at each other's units at many events as we can. And we'll point and sometimes laugh at the different units that are there. But individually, what we have is, it really is, we spend a lot of time together on site. We'll be either adjacent or under the same pavilions. We'll go out to dinner afterwards. We'll go see movies together. But Batista has in Ariok, they host a Christmas party, which all of the fighting units they're all invited over to come and bring their families and have a little celebration. Same thing on Halloween. So we socialize as much as possible, given the fact that we're not adjacent to each other. So, we haven't seen as much of each other in these past 6 months as we normally would. But yeah, it's very fundamental to that whole being friends, knowing we can count on each other, not only just on the melee field, but just in general, to help build the sense of belonging that you need to have a good, effective melee unit.
Fantastic. All right, last but not least, Mara. How does Wedco build their esprit de corps outside of practice?
So, probably going to be playing the broken record at this point, but we do a lot of stuff together that's not fighting. So we call it social practice, but after practice we go to dinner. Interpret social practice as you will; it'll probably be correct. We do projects together, we camp together, we road trip together, and we basically create like a family with each other and with other people that we think might be a good addition to the family. I think a lot of what we do is like once we feel like they are like already like a part of what we're doing, we're like, hey, do you actually want to wear this checky stuff? So like, because like as she posted earlier, like our motto has honor, camaraderie, and the sword. The camaraderie is really, really important to us, like right from the get-go.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that process.
Nope.
Nope. Completely unbiased. No, nothing. All right. So, as a quick palate cleanser, not final, but I have one more section after this, but we've talked about the honor and the camaraderie and the being friends and happiness, but does your unit have a nemesis? Who is it? And I want to keep this lighthearted. No, I will be ripping their hearts out at the end of the day. Lighthearted, fun.
At least
and
panelists are cackling, so this is.
I wanted to ask this question for a reason. So lighthearted, fun, and brief. Please be brief. We have a whole section left to do, and we're breaking. We keep doing 2.5-hour episodes instead of just 2 hours. So, who is your nemesis in competition? Why? Is it because they wear something funny? Are they just always across from you on the melee field? Is it a friendly, healthy rivalry on who gets the A's on the report card and who doesn't? And we're gonna start with Seamus and Malie.
Oh, good. We'll be over quickly. I don't know that we've really got anybody like that right now. Secret's out there, but we beat their butts.
Moira mentioned like House or Honey Badger is also in your kingdom, and you not have a grudge?
I honestly don't even know who House Honey Badger is because we don't get to travel that much. Yeah. Finances being what they are, unfortunately. I've heard the name, but I haven't encountered them on the field.
Legit.
But
But that goes both ways. They don't come up here either, right? So it's a big kingdom.
Yeah.
Sometimes too big, but.
Yeah, like Warwick just said in the chat, it is a 30-hour drive from top to bottom for us here. So yeah, locally we do have one big rapier melee war every year. Well, big being the operative term, and it's our barony versus the other local barony in Seagirt. And it's generally pretty fun. It's a friendly rivalry more than anything else.
Well, that makes me happy to hear. I'm going to jump to Laetres next.
I just want to answer for everyone and say the Black Tigers. Is that okay? I mean, you don't have to ask anyone else.
We should have invited them to this panel.
No.
Is that wrong? I'm sorry.
That is an A+ answer. I will move on from there. It was perfect in every way. Next.
I'm saying it must be 9:30 because her signal just dropped.
But she's on Eastern time, so like
it's 10:30 here.
No.
All right, so
I just to cut you off before she went.
We did the West Coast. Remy.
Sure. I'm going to say the Handsome Boys, mostly because there's a lot of them that are out practice. So like we have plenty of times to kind of like trash talk and kind of fight each other and stuff. But then we get to fight with each other at Penzic and stuff. So it's a nice kind of like we beat each other up and then we go high five and try to beat up the mid round or whoever we're across from.
So who's in the Handsome Boys that we might know of?
Donovan, Master Donovan, Maester Anastasia, Master Llewellyn, close to the end over there. They have a whole bunch of loppers that just kind of also will just show up for Penzic. But those are like the three big names.
And Mara, last but not least.
You did say it right. I'm so proud.
Yeah, I keep reading your MO. How was that?
Scottish Gaelic. Scottish Gaelic.
Anglo-Saxon.
Right, so, what?
Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah,
I
no.
got the one language.
Okay, so within the kingdom, we have friendly competition with the Thieves of Hearts, who are they're another very large rapier centric household, mostly out of the Chicago area, but they've got the diaspora similar to what we have. However, we do tend to work together with them a lot to face off against at Penzic the Calivers and Hanson boys. So, and then at the Rare Purple Wars, we're all like, yay, we get to fight together now. So it all works out at the end.
Bruce, are you back?
I'm back. I'm sorry. It was, hey, the nightly internet flicker waited until 10:30 instead of its usual 9:30.
We were wondering.
And that was a nice softball question for everyone, but I missed the best answer. The one that I had written that question for.
Remy or Mara?
Mara. Although I think Laetres had the best answer to that question. So it's pretty good when every panelist bursts out laughing.
I will say they've gotten better. I do enjoy fighting with a good portion of them. So.
I mean, that was A+ though. That was good snark.
Can I just go back? I missed out something here, and I've been called out for it in private chat, is that Master Guido was kind of sad that we didn't pick him as a nemesis. And I just want to clarify that everybody he picks up in his side of the family and trains that consistently comes out there and makes my life horrible in tournament combat, man, that just grinds my gears. But we just don't beat on the warfield enough, not against each other anyway. So I was thinking about you, Guido.
Oh no. All right. So for our last section of this evening, since I broke our little outline into like 3 or 4 sections, we want to talk a little bit about what does it take to build and maintain a unit. We've touched on what makes your units so fabulous in the esprit de corps, the training, the time, the types of events you go to. But I want to talk a little bit about the darker side of it. What doesn't work in building and maintaining a unit? And what have you seen, or what's been a failed initiative in your current unit? And then I want to jump from there. So when you answer that first section of questions, think a little bit about if you were starting from scratch, how would you do that? So first question, what doesn't work in building and maintaining a unit? Like what have you seen either outside your unit or within your unit? I don't really care what you decide to touch on, just keep that in mind. I'm gonna start with Laertes since he has, he's got the experience.
I would say the units that seem to be most challenged for growth and sustainability are the ones that are more built around a cult of personality, around one main leader in the group, where it really is trying to either emulate or satisfy the desires of one person, because that's not sustainable. And I've seen units fall apart over the years because of either the disinterest or the growing or a change in that one person everything is built around. I mean, that's why it really is important to be a little bit more well-rounded, to share the load and the vision across the members of the group. And sure, there's founding ones that come up with the idea that people will migrate to, but it should never really be, like, Portos should never really be Laertes' group. It should be the Portos. And again, I've seen other ones where there is a kind of a cult of personality built up around one person, and that's not the most effective or long-term sustainable version of building a unit.
I think that's a very insightful answer and very helpful for some of the culture and some of the trends we're seeing with snark we've had in this chat, with some of the discussions about building a better SCA. So thank you, Laertes. I'm going to jump over to Remy next.
Yeah, so I think sometimes just taking it too seriously. Like, sure, everyone likes to win, and you like to get better, you need to like put the effort and work hard and stuff like that. But it gets a point of like, I guess like diminishing returns. Like if you're just concentrating so much on that and it becomes not enjoyable for people in the group and stuff, then you're not going to have a group to enjoy all that hard work with later and stuff. So find the balance between, all right, let's drill this thing, let's do some melee, let's just kind of play around. Maybe we just need a little bit of a break and stuff. I think it's kind of important. And that might kind of vary from group to group, just like different cultures and stuff like that. But kind of just knowing, I think that balance is super useful, and it might take some trial and error to kind of figure out what that is for your group.
Fabulous. All right, I'm going to jump over to Malie and Seamus.
I think what Laetres said is really the big portion of that. You can't have a cult of personality. You can't allow, and I know rapier fighters, one ego to overtake the whole group. It has to be a group effort. You have to be able to distribute the load. That way lies burnout. You'll lose people so fast.
All right. Anything to add, Seamus?
No, I think, again, I was just going to say that Laetres nailed it. I mean, we've benefited from such horizontal development. I mean, that's practical because sometimes that person's going to die and leave the field. But on a much bigger picture, it's just the people that you game with, that you play with, that you dream with every day. You know, if it is a cult of personality situation, we've seen it on the field early in our career in the SCA. You know, I've seen what happens when people develop that cult around them and it turns sour. So it's just luckily that's not been part of our experience. But yeah, I would say he hit the nail on the head. That's just, you know, that's the one thing you can't have.
It sounds too like you're kind of touching on what Remy said about not taking it too seriously, with the fact that you guys play together and bond together instead of just always drills all the time. So thank you guys. You've really tied into the other two panelists' answers. All right, Mara.
Well, ditto on everybody else. So keeping it light, like we have some of the snark you see in the side chat is relevant to how seriously we take things sometimes. But also to kind of keep that one person running the show sort of ego cult personality thing, communication with as much of the group as you can in one go. It's not always possible because, I mean, like, we use primarily Facebook, and, well, Facebook's algorithms are interesting. So, but we really do try to communicate and try to include as many people in what's going on or where people are hanging out or anything as much as we can. So that if someone feels left out, it's usually by accident, or we just couldn't get a hold of them, or it's rarely, if ever, intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Because back to the whole camaraderie thing, we like you, come do things with us. So
I know that
geography play into this, because I think, and I don't remember Wednesday Company's origins, but I think geography was a huge part in the initiation of each of these units that we're talking to. And I've been part of units that tried to form from people spread across the kingdom and did not work.
And
So, like, Wednesday Company, that started at a local practice, or did it start?
it started out of a local practice, Minnesota in Indiana, Constellation, so Bloomington, Indiana. At this time, we have people in all corners of Indiana, as well as Bruce in Chicago. I'm in North Shield, but I'm not supposed to technically be active, but it's a pandemic, who cares? And we have other members of North Shield, other people. We have one person out in Colorado, and at Pensick, we're still all fighting together, and we still work together very well. So, I mean, maintaining that communication and talking to each other, and when we're with each other, we totally fight either at each other or with each other, so.
Well, and now that you've outed me, I can add into this conversation a little bit, which is playing off what Mara said, in deciding to join WEDCO as someone who doesn't live near most of WEDCO. That communication factor was huge, because there are so many times when you're new, and not everyone knows my history, but I've played in the SCA in at least 4 different kingdoms on a regular basis. The Mid being my most recent home. But showing up to a local practice, or even showing up to a melee practice, and not having anyone to play with or pay attention to you or help you, is one of the biggest off-putting things for membership retention, for keeping people interested in fighting melee. So yeah, just that's my 2 cents. They'll buy you a coffee with $1.50 if you go to the cheap place. All right, so we've touched on this, on kind of the bad parts and what makes what you've seen fail before delving into the deeper question. And nothing against your current units, but if you had to start from scratch tomorrow, how would you do that? How would you build a new unit? What would be your 3 key factors, I guess is what I'm trying to boil this down to if you need a touch point. I'm going to start with Laetres with the experience and the many members and units. And let's go.
Okay, so I think I might have a unique experience amongst the panel, being the fact that I was, like I said, I kind of built the original Qaid army from scratch because we didn't have one at the time. There were just a bunch of individual fighters. So I sat down with the more experienced fighters in the kingdom at the time, and we actually built the initial units that have evolved over time, and it's really not the same. And the categories and criteria we were using really were along of experience, skill, and I hate personality, but mindset. I think that's probably a better way to do it. And the less experienced, younger fighters, we basically made the anvil. Basically, they held the line. They were all about defense, tying up the opposing line, and being that bedrock that we needed. And we assigned one of the first White Guards in Qaid to kind of train them and work on those fundamentals about defense. And then we built a couple of the hammers that would basically work the edges and bring the fight to our anvil so that we could basically pull apart and break the opposing line. And these were the more mid-level to more advanced fighters that we had. And we basically broke it into 2. And then we had what we called at the time the Cowboys, which is now the Rogue Squad. And those were basically the people you just kind of let go in the backfield to try to break the opponent's plan. And if you notice, it wasn't my house. Basically, my household, we split up into those different units at the time so that we could give the experience and that kind of perspective on the strengths to these units that we were building. And over time, after the first few years, naturally they started evolving into people that would work better together, whether geographically or personality-wise, or however they kind of gravitated in groups. And by playing to the people's strengths initially, when they started mixing and breaking up and everything, we were able to bring those different skill sets and intermix them into the different units that evolved, so that everyone was a little bit more well-rounded and able to respond and adapt to the situations that were presented in front of them, because everyone brought a little bit different experience from the first couple of years of the Army to the units that grow. And so we kind of went through that thought exercise and executed it across, and it really wasn't me. I was kind of like the spearhead of it, by getting together, speaking to the people, having a realistic evaluation of the skills of the people that were involved at the time, and putting them together in a like-minded and like-abled groups allowed us to grow from there and then kind of intermingle it and build on those different set of skills. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so too. I really like the approach to not personality, but mindset. And I think that's actually an excellent point in figuring out whether or not a group is going to work well together. So thank you very much, Laetres. I'm going to jump over to Seamus and Malie now. Same question. If you had to start all over again, what are the 3 most important factors and why?
How to follow him up. I'd be at the stage of like showing up at practice with a box of popsicles and saying, "Hey, you guys want to come stab people with me?"
That would have worked on me. No shame.
Me too, honestly. Yeah, as a thought process, though, if I were to do it all over again, I think the friendship would be critical. The ability to communicate would be critical. And the ability to be able to leave your ego at the door. and be able to say, okay, this is my job now. I'm going to do my job, and I'm not going to get shirty because I'm not doing the cowboy things and I'm sitting in the shield wall when I don't actually like it, but it's where I need it.
You'd want them to be a jack of all trades. That's what
I
I'm
would
hearing.
want them to be accepting of the role that was asked of them at the time it was asked.
Okay.
And
No,
that's just a mirror of what we've done, because like I say, work's always put command on other people's shoulders, and not just, okay, it's your turn to yell, but like legitimately, you're going to pick the strategy. What are we doing? Like, tell me from the get-go. And I think everybody does need to do that. So yeah, no, finding people that can answer that, and not just, they're not just always the flankers. Yeah, I get it. You like to run in the backfield and kill people when they're not looking, but sometimes we got to change it up. And are you going to hop about it if that's what you're asked to do? I think that is important. But I mean, yeah, realistically, I'd crank it back a notch and I'd say, yeah, it's the same. I would rebuild what we have now. If you guys want to come out for dinner with me after practice, and we'll get to talk and know each other, and then we can talk about going out there and bringing murder to the field in general.
hey, as a commander, I can absolutely appreciate that. That sounds like a very good start to a melee unit. All right, so we have mindset. We have mindset again in slightly different terms and a slightly different frame. I'm gonna jump over to Mara next, since I've made Remy go first a couple of times, so he can go last this time.
So I would keep the camaraderie, like the friendship, because from what we have found, like the training with people that you don't like, you probably aren't going to retain as well. And it kind of like, if you can't at least get along with the people who you're fighting beside, you probably won't trust them to do a thing either. So that's part of why I value the camaraderie, especially when it comes to the field. I would, because this is relevant, because I'm actually gonna try to make a unit up here, but that's not happened yet, obviously. I would also look for consistency. If I would like to see that they can, if they can show up when they say they're going to show up, or relatively around when they'll show up, or if they keep canceling, or they just stop communicating, and they become otherwise unpredictable. So consistency is a good thing that I would look for. And consistency. I had another thought and I lost it. There's a cat on my lap. I'm not gonna say it was entirely my fault.
Those cats are very distracting. I can fully attest. So consistency is a great line of thought stemming from the greater idea of mindset. And I love that you guys are all playing off of each other. Makes my job writing up a summary later much easier. All right. So I'm going to jump over to Remy next. Remy, if you had to start all over again, what are your 3 most important factors for building a unit?
Yeah, it's interesting because if I do it all over again, I probably wouldn't want to change anything, because a lot of what makes the Calivers is based on like our history of being a bunch of like the kids who never got picked for the other melee teams, and we needed to work together anyways and stuff. So we really had to build a good chemistry because of that, because we were relatively new and we didn't have a lot of skill at that point, so we needed to work as a team. So I think that chemistry of being able to work as a team is super important. Like I've been captain of the East Kingdom Melee Champs team, and like when I was in charge, I cared more about chemistry between fighters and stuff versus who was like the hot sticks and who could just like rack up a lot of body counts and stuff. Because when push comes to shove, if there's just a few people on each side left, I want people that can work together to try to clean up versus everything else. So I think chemistry, if I had to like boil all that down, would probably be one of the top things for sure. I think what other people mentioned, like consistency, is kind of nice. Because we're in the Boston area, we always have a ton of new people kind of coming in, so we're not like short on new bodies and people to possibly join us at some point. So I'm never worried about never having enough people at a particular event or whatever. But that could be just because we're in Boston and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think email. Just like photoshopped Nick Fury with a caliber, what I wanted the Cassocks to look like. Be like, hey, join the Calivers. We're gonna fight together anyways. So like, yeah, fun was a core aspect of it. So I think I would want to keep that for sure.
All right.
So
So
I want to expand on some of the discussion that's happened because there was a lot of discussion around how people started, these units started at practices that didn't have a whole lot of notable people, with I think the exception of ship Drakkar. And so we've been asking how you would start over from the beginning. How would you start with, if there were already big personalities at a practice? How would you get, how would you convince those egos to work together, to check the egos at the door, to join up? And this is kind of open to everybody. So anybody who has thoughts? Say somebody who moved to a different kingdom and is trying to start up a practice there, a unit there.
Works like just line them up, defeat them in battle.
hi, I'm Bruce, and I was too Eastern for the Mid-Realm when I moved there. How did I ever become a part of WEDCO? All right. So yeah, go ahead, Laetres. Go.
Yeah, like I have a problem answering a question. So part of it is the philosophy that we've tried to beat in, encourage into the members of the community, is that the priorities of what you're trying to achieve, and really the main priority should be bringing honor and reputation to the kingdom, not your unit, not individual honor. But it really is, keep in mind that when you're out there, especially when you're fighting people from other kingdoms, the first thing they're going to think of is that you're, in my case, you're from Caid. So if you screw up, first thing you're going to think is those damn Caid fighters. They're not going to think those damn Portos or Laetres. What a tip. Well, they do, but not at first. So drilling in, especially to the big experienced fighters that come into the community, is to get past the idea of the ego, and you're going to make a name for yourself on the field when you're going out and doing rapier melees, because that should never be the goal, because if you do, you sacrifice the potential goals or achievements of the overall scenario. So working more on the mindset and less about the skill and integrating them into the unit, because that's just going to happen through practice, and more reinforcing that mindset of the priority being the kingdom's achievements, not yours or your units, seems to help when we're working and moving forward and bringing in the experienced fighters, whether from a different kingdom or they're from HEMA or wherever. And that seems to be a basis to build success on.
All right. I think that was a great answer.
Sorry.
You're really good or bad at that, Wistric, and I'm not really sure which it is.
Depends on how much I've had to drink.
How much have you had to drink, Wistric?
I'll take it out of the morning.
All right. Sorry, Mara. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. So yes, I am one of those. I moved to North Shield this past November, and then pandemic hit. It's been great. One of the things I've been using, and I've actually used a good bit down in Mid-Realm as well, is I happen, and maybe this is playing off my own ego a little bit, whatever, I don't care at this point. I happen to be, I enjoy teaching Melee, and I enjoy helping others enjoy Melee, and that's one of the things I actually enjoyed about WEDCO, is that we all enjoy Melee. So as I eventually go about trying to start a unit up here, I think my main tagline is, this is fun. Let me help you see how fun this is. So that's the big one for me, is that there's a line earlier, is melee is murder and murder is fun. And the other part that a lot of people either they don't like to acknowledge or they don't realize it, is that a lot of skills transfer from tournament fighting to single fighting. I mean, to melee fighting, sorry. Back to the whole drinking thing. So if you get better, like, fighting, like, tournament stuff, some of that's going to carry over to melee. Like, you're not going to like just start practicing melee and just like automatically just suck right off the get-go if your tourney game is pretty spot on already. And if you start working on some melee skills like situational awareness or paying attention to, you know, situational awareness, communication, other where you're going, like footwork, a lot of that carries over to melee. You don't think about it. Melee skills will carry over to single. So that's kind of the things that when people are like, well, I just want to fight singles all practice, I don't want to work on the melee stuff. I'm like, well, you can still work on your single skills during melee practice and it's still gonna work okay. So those are my two big things.
All right, does anyone else have anything else to add? Wow, lots of L's. Does anyone have anything else to add to the final question posited by Wistric?
I guess it's just all you can do is ask if you do have big personalities in your practice, in your barony or whatever, even if it's just an event where people come together. I guess you just got to ask what their motivations are. It's like, you know, do you want to win this for the principality, for the barony, for your family, whatever? Is this a group effort, or are you here because you have your family unit and you guys just want to be the hot shots up in the field? That's a little tougher to deal with, I think. At that point, you're, well, then how can we work together with you? But, you know, if they are willing to come together, then you can start talking about, well, is it a matter of who wants to control this? Like, do you need to control your own units? We can set you up as a commander. Do we need to alternate? I think there's compromise there to be had. You just got to figure out what their motivations are and what do they want. Like, you've brought your 10 people to the field, you know, and maybe you've got an ego or you're just who you are, and what do you want to, how do you want to do this? I think communication there. You just got to figure out.
Well, so I think you actually touched on something kind of important there, which is asking what their motivations are. I'd like to ask a follow-up question, if that's all right with you. So how do you convince a new person or maybe not even new, but a tournament fighter? How do you convince someone who doesn't really see the draw in winning something for the principality, for the family, for the whatever, to come play melee, to be a part of your unit and to work with the team?
Oh, I don't know. Once they get that feel of running down the backfield with death from behind, they'll know. But how do you talk them into it? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's not your thing, you can try to sell them on it. You know, obviously someone who's good, you know, like you say, if they are a talented fighter and you just want to get them out of the melee field, you know, they'll probably be an asset if they can work with you. But you just got to, again, I guess, figure what do they like about this game? You know, how can I convince you that come on out here and this war, even though war is totally different from tournament fighting, you know, here's what we like about it. It sounds like you're just having a conversation at that point. I don't think there's a quick, easy way to say this is a trick to use. But yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you try to get the people out there if you're trying to get a good, I mean, we certainly suffer from a smaller rapier turnout significantly than the heavy fighters in our area do. So that's been a problem. You know, by all means, you want to get these people out there and convince them. So I guess we've even done a bit of that, but whether or not it always works, some people it's just not their thing, or they're scared to come try it. Sometimes you can't even get them out of practice to an actual event, so that's a step on its own too, right?
True, absolutely. And we're asking you to do the impossible here, which is to just distill so many complex societal and human emotions into a couple of sentences on a 2-hour Zoom call. So I appreciate you for trying. I'm going to kind of wrap up here and say that it sounds like selling people on how fun it can be and showing them how they can meet their goals during melee is a great way to convince some of those bigger personalities to check the ego at the door. And I think that that's a wonderful way to kind of wrap up the discussion about how to form a new unit or how to work with what you've got in creating a unit for the melee field. So it's the end of our program. That was the end of the Q&A. Panelists, hasn't keeled over in his chair.
That smile.
Sorry, we froze for a second over here. What did I miss?
You're supposed to ask the no shit there I was story. Were you gonna ask me to go? Like, was that what that was?
I will absolutely ask the no shit there I was story. What is the coolest thing your unit ever did? And let's go across the top of my screen. Remy.
Oh, he's back. I see the eyes. I see the smile.
Did I? So yeah, my internet apparently is being funky. My turn. So Remy, and this is going to be for everybody, what is the coolest thing your unit ever managed to pull off?
I did have a good. I get called first for these things, and I like never have an answer ready for.
Okay, we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you.
That's fine.
We'll come back to you, Remy. All right. Who is ready for this question?
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Seamus, Malie, take it.
All right. So one of the events that we had running for a number of years was Tournament of Armies. And for people who not know, it was a number of armies all come together to try to compete. So it wasn't just two armies, it was multiple smaller squads. I guess my favorite version of this event was one that involved firearms and control points. And I guess the best thing we did that one is sat down. It was all preloaded. You had to preload your firearms and get them ready to go on the lay-on. And then you had to go out and control these control points with a undetermined, well, I mean, the marshals knew, but it was a secret time. And at that time, when it was called, whoever had control points got points, right? Very simple. But the best part of this is we were outnumbered and outgunned. So what we ended up having was a situation where the larger army was clearly going to be able to control more control points. So what we did is we kind of just spread out a little bit, gave them an opportunity to see a couple easy to grab control points on the far side of the field. And when they predictably moved across that field, kind of trying to project the force they had to take those, it left an opening where I said, okay, now you guys just cover this right here so that they can't come back this way. And I'm going to go over to their initial area where they started, not a control point, just their initial spawn area. And I'm going to pick up all those weapons that they loaded and left there because they can't carry them all. And then I proceeded to shoot them all with their own guns. Worked out really well.
That's awesome.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and that was just from letting them go where we wanted them to go and then held it off while I ran over and grabbed all the weapons. So.
I think for me, I know I referred to it earlier, but in my very early years fencing, I think it was maybe my second war, I was part of the Amazon Shield Wall. There were 5 ladies. We all had these big, super to spec war shields. The family's kind of famous for them. And we all just lined up in this wall, and we had white scarves, we had high-level fighters, we had everybody aligned against us, and we just sat there and we murdered them, and it was so satisfying.
That was the Protect the Warwick Shield Wall.
It was the Protect the Warwick Shield Wall. He was standing behind us, issuing orders to the rest of the crew, and his ladies protected him. And it's probably what really instilled my love of melee. And now I'm less fond of the kind of line battle type stuff, and I really do love the group tactics and the kind of guerrilla warfare. But that's really what gave me my love of melee.
Nice. Absolutely awesome. That makes me so happy. All right. Who else is ready? Remy, are you ready yet?
This is the No Shit There I Was story portion. Audience, this is also, please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Once we are all wrapped up with the No Shit There I Was, we will get to whatever questions we have outstanding. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can go now.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think I can. So I think for me, like the first time we actually fought together as a unit was probably one of the cooler moments, just because it was the first time we went out there. We all had our spanking brand new bright blue cassocks with like the gold linings, like in the woods battle. So we stuck out like a sore thumb, which was fantastic in a Res Woods battle because we could find where we needed to go kind of stuff. But we get out there, it was basically our group versus everyone else that showed up at the event. They had a lot of like high native fences at the time in the East and stuff. And as we like lay on his call, we run out there humming the Smurfs theme song because we're all in bright blue and stuff. And just we ended up like winning the war point as it was for that event and stuff. And it was the first time we really fought together as the Calivers and stuff. So it was a nice like it was a nice like proof that all the work that we had put into and stuff and like the training and getting to know each other and stuff, like we still had only 2 AOAs between us at that point. That 2 AOAs and like 10 other no award fencers could beat the other side that had a bunch of grant levels and like just like really experienced fencers and stuff. So that was just a really cool, yeah. We're a bunch of nobodies, but we can still kick whoever spots across from us as a team. That was really cool.
Nice. Okay, the Smurfs theme song is really what adds to that entire thing.
Yeah, it really kept things light.
All right, Laetres, you're next.
Okay, so I'm going to beg your indulgence because I have two, but one's a unit and one's an army thing, and it's one of my most cherished things. But I'll do the unit one first. We were having a discussion amongst my members that are on this right now, and I disagree with all of them. So, so for me, we had the opportunity at Estrella War, where one of our founding members and one of my ex-students were the King and Queen of Onstiora, and we negotiated that they come, the mighty Onstioran army, which was basically them, come out to Estrella and fight alongside Caid. So we were able to join the West Coast and the original households together to fight. And there was an opportunity, basically a football scenario, where you have to get a special person from one side to the other side, right? So they gave them to us. So we basically did a flying wedge, just our household. And on Leon, we basically did a diagonal all the way across the field. And even though we hadn't worked with each other in 10 years, that sense of community and working and that silent communication between us, it was described, since we were all wearing black and gold, it was like a swarm of angry bees that went across the field. So I enjoy that description of my household as a swarm of angry bees. So it was just the fact that merging the old with the new and the disparate members of the household getting together and being able to come together and still have that communication and feeling and camaraderie with the passage of years. It's one of those special moments for me. But really, secondly, and I hate to hit this point again, but the very first year that Caid went to Estrella as an army, we had a lot of challenges. We had about 9 months to come together based on the reconstitution of Estrella to field an army. And we basically started from scratch. And as commander, I dealt with a lot of crap from, let's say, my counterparts in other kingdoms. Doubting our abilities, and our partner that year, I had to actually bring in the crown to get equitable treatment on some of the scenarios, just because of the doubts that were placed on us. And it was, back then, it was 3 days of scenarios. The third day, it came down to the very last scenario. The war points were tied, our side with them. And it was basically just last man standing, fight the open field, get it done. So we got our army together, had a moment to talk about how the accomplishments that we had made on this day and at the war, and how what we had proved to our distractors, and that really our goal this next one is just to fight as best and as honorable as we could. So I'm much more the Patton type of commander, where I'm on the front line. My counterpart from the other kingdom, he stayed in the back the whole time, and we engaged the other side on our last engagement of the war. And when I finally looked up and looked across the field, there were 10 people, maybe 12 people left standing, all of them Caid. And looking across, I had that moment realizing what we had accomplished in a short amount of time by the dedication, the work, the esprit de corps that we had built in that period of time, and looking across what we had accomplished at it. It's one of those moments that still gets to me now, thinking about the work that people came together and what we accomplished and what we continue to bring forward from that time. So that's always one of my most cherished memories, is that moment realizing what we'd all accomplished together. So. That's one way to kill a conversation.
Yeah, no, that,
I mean, you've got everyone going all misty in the chat, so.
Seamus, Malie? I saw your hand go up.
Oh, I was thumbs up for a story.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're here.
right here. All right, Mara.
So full disclosure, I've been on command staff for about the same amount of time that I've been in Wetco. So it's actually very rare for me to actually get to fight with Wetco, at least the large wars. So there's a lot of individual, in my command brain, I see the whole battlefield. It is super hard for me to see individual things happening, other than if they're not a problem spot. So that's insight into Mara's command brain.
Well, I'm offering you a friend, phone a friend. Do we want to unmute Vindus and let him tell a story? Or do you have one?
I have one. Well, he actually gave me 3 to choose from. He was there for one of them. I was there for the one that I could think of. So the one that I can think of, Wetco traditionally, we have 6 to 10 people on the field on a good year. There's a year where there were 4 of us, and I was command staff, so you really can't count me as part of the unit. But there was the 1 year Penzik, I think it was the purple, no, it wasn't the Purple War. I think it was one of the years Remy was general, but I was CO, second. And for the progressive flag battle, we had to basically take flags in order that the other side was defending. And at one point, me and my friend, my brother, Warder Niku, the 2 of us were on attack. And I don't remember which flag it was, but the 2 of us together hit a line. And then after we made contact, we each just rolled it going opposite directions. And the Midrealm army kind of just poured through the gap that we made. And we didn't talk about that's what we were going to do. It kind of just happened. And as soon as I saw him going one direction, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go this way. And the gap opened and it was amazing. And we took that flag in 2 seconds. But I think Vindus would be better for the one that is really kind of an epitome of small but mighty. So if you want to tag him on this. I'm talking about the field battle that you referenced, Vindus.
Hey, Vindus, if you turn your camera on, you are being recorded, and I will get your written consent privately.
You're muted, buddy.
You're still muted.
He's still muted. Did you mute him?
There we go. I'm unmuted now. All right. I am Vindus. So no shit. There we were at Penzing 1 year. I think we had 4 guys that year, and we were sent to the far left side of the field to be a big distraction. But His Highness decided he was going to be a bigger distraction, go further left than we were that year. And so as we were lining up to go, we start to move, and he's moving at a nice leisurely pace. And then suddenly a squad of about 5 or 6 guys tears off after His Highness and ignores us. So then we just intercept them, and we took that crew down, and then we proceeded to hit the far left side of the line, and we folded it back on itself like it was a book. And we won that pass, and then we lined up again, and then we noticed, oh, there's more people over there now. Well, let's try it again. It didn't work exactly the same that time, but we all walked off the field with our lives that day, and we won that pass. And then the 3rd time, we're like, oh, there's a whole lot more people, and there's Donovan and Death over there right now. We took that as a compliment, and we died gracefully. So
That was 4 poorer people that they kept stacking more and more against.
Yeah, we just, we did what we do, and that is we hit a corner hard and we try and roll it back on itself as hard as we can. So yeah, that was one of our big stories. So small but mighty.
Yay! Okay, so that's our no shit there I was stories. And Laetres had his second story.
Oh, no. No one cried enough. No. Condessa Batista is dying to tell a story, and she would love to sign whatever release is necessary so she can get on here and tell a story.
First, if anybody in the audience has any other questions, please drop them in the chat. And then I think once Condessa Batista has told her story, we might get to them.
Okay, so we do actually have a question in the chat. Do we want to touch that before we unmute her, or do we want to let her go first and then do the question?
I say let her talk.
Let's let her talk. Yes. All right. Hijack it. Hijack it. We love it when you hijack our units.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't have to do anything.
Can you hear me talking?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not 100% sure how to change my video to be able to see me, but whatever. You don't need to see me. Yoda's perfect. This just goes back when I was Queen of Caid back in 2000, and we went to Australia. And that year, oddly enough, for the first time ever, there were 3 Donia queens on the fighting field. So it was the Queen of the Outlands, me, and I believe, Laertes, do you remember who the other queen was?
Yeah, I was Aidenville.
Aidenville. So all 3 kingdoms had a Donia as a queen. So we decided that year to start the scenarios for the rapier with the queens going out and fighting each other. And so I went out and fought the Queen of the Outlands, and on a one-on-one, and the object was the first queen to fall. That's when the scenarios would start and all of the armies would run out onto the field to start the scenarios. And so Laertes, who was commanding the forces that year, basically, I have this one particular shot that is almost undefendable. And it's very, shut up. And it's very unique. And Laertes pretty much told the armies, the minute you see Batista start to do this hook shot, get ready to run. And about 5 seconds later, Batista did the hook shot and the Queen of the Outlands went down and our armies went out. And it was just so cool that, like, for the first time, all of the queens were Donias. And the Queen of the Outlands beat me by like 2 weeks as to being the first Donia queen of the society. So a queen, a Donia in their own right as far as being queen. So anyways, I don't know, maybe it's more exciting to me, but I thought it was a pretty cool story at the time. So
That's pretty amazing.
thank you for indulging me.
That is absolutely amazing. And it's always great to hear these stories because it really gets to tell us where we came from and kind of the direction we're going. And it just makes me, wait, my soul is cold and dead. But it makes me almost feel warm on the inside.
That's so
All right.
touching, Bruce.
What?
That's so touching, Bruce.
Right? My soul is not quite dead yet. It's working on it. All right, so we did have one question from the audience that we weren't able to touch on yet. The others made it integrated into our little outline. But each panelist kind of actually touched on this during our last little section about building a unit. But I'm gonna open this up to the entire panel. Please talk at will, and if it gets just over exuberant, we'll pick who's talking. But how do you improve a unit when you don't have a lot of hot sticks or people with a ton of social capital? What can you do to help those who are more supporting players or more supporting like personalities? I know a lot of us talked about how when we began our units, when we began forming our units, we were all a bunch of scrubs and nobodies. How did you transition from scrub / nobody into I am a Carolingian Caliver and I have Nick Fury in my inbox. Like, how do you get there?
I mean, for us, we just kind of like really focused on the team aspect and stuff because we didn't have a lot of awards. So we knew we couldn't, like, what happens a lot of times you see Melee just becomes a bunch of like one-on-one fights. Like, we knew we were not going to win Melee fighting like that. So we really needed to really work as a team. We knew like if there's different advantages different groups have, we knew skill, like one-on-one skill was not an advantage we had at that point. But maybe we could look for other skill, like have other advantages, like we could get maybe more numbers on in other teams' hot stick and stuff and take them out. Or just be able to work as a group, move as a unit, be able to talk to each other, communication and stuff. So we look for other ways to like basically we just kind of recognize where we were weak and try to emphasize the bits we could make stronger and stuff. And just by doing that and just fighting more often, our own individual skills kind of increased so that we leveled up just by that and stuff. But we really focused on the team aspects.
Fabulous. Any other panelists have anything to add about how do you support the supporters?
I think it's critical to pull those people into your group, and whether that be with a strong advocate for them or just a general sense and culture of welcoming and not being elitist hot sticks. That's super critical, and your word thing grows on the field. You start murdering people, people are going to know who you are. Suddenly you're not a supporting character anymore. Suddenly you're, holy crap, here they come. But being welcoming, being inclusive, and being an advocate for the support characters is super, super critical.
And it's a problem too. I've heard things from people in other practices say, this guy kind of runs a practice and he's not interested in this. And I mean, I guess if you're the brand new person there, I don't really know what you do in that situation. I think you really hope that other people in practice maybe step up to help support you. But Molly's right. Time will, if you keep putting your effort in, time will make you a presence in that practice, one hopes. And if they don't want to do what you want to do, then just do it yourself. And the right people will come to you, and next thing you know, you've got yourself a warband, I guess.
So I want to bounce off something that Molly said. When you say advocate for them, could you give us an example?
I'm going to tie back into Remy's last kid's picked on the dodgeball field. Don't make them be the last kid picked. Hey, you're a new fighter. Why don't you run with me in this war? Come with me, stick with me, we're going to work together. Hey, you don't really know what's going on here. Do you have any questions? Is there any way I can help you understand this better, feel more comfortable in this? You have to give them permission to give themselves permission to suck. And it's super, super critical. You're not going to be a hot stick, but stick with me and you might live a little bit longer. Why don't you go with this person because you're left-handed, they're right-handed, perfect, go.
We'll just have fun.
Or you're just gonna have a lot of fun and come join us around our fire afterwards and we'll have a beer and we can talk about it.
I have a line that I give some of my friends when they forget that this is supposed to be fun is like, you've gotta make it fun. If it's not fun, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Redefine your win conditions.
Yeah.
So I want to bounce off that a little bit more since I've been having to kind of focus fire these. How can we make sure those people aren't falling through the cracks when, sorry, I just had it pointed out to me in private chat that I used a really bad unit pun and I didn't even realize it, just barreled right through. So I'd like to open one more question, like follow up for this. How do we prevent those people from falling through the cracks? How can we take a little more initiative? And what do we do with the people who aren't necessarily brand spanking new, but at that mid-tier where they have either plateaued or just feel invisible? How can we build that esprit de corps? How can we teach them? How can we get them to get the band back together, as Seamus so nicely put it? And this is open to everyone on the panel.
Can I? So
Yep.
I was looking back at the question originally. She wasn't asking necessarily like how to get a new person. It's someone who already knows, like, maybe they're in that mid-level, but they can see what, and they are a part of that unit already, and they can see something that needs to be addressed. That's more of what I've read that question as.
Mm-hmm. That's
So,
why I asked the follow-up.
okay, cool. All right. So and I might be reading this wrong too, but I know that, not to get too gendered, but oftentimes non-males will encounter that barrier more often. And something that I learned pretty early on is that you don't wait for it to be your turn to lead. If you see something that's not being addressed, then don't be shy. Don't wait for someone to give you permission to fix things. If the leaders aren't doing their job and you know what needs to happen and you know what can get fixed, do it. I mean, even if it's with like the smaller people, not the smaller people, the newer people, just taking the newer people off with you because the older people are already in the habit of not listening to you. Yes, that happens. Then start at the bottom, work your way up. Because the newer people are looking for someone to help them. And when the older people realize, the more experienced, realize that something needs addressed and these people have already figured it out, maybe they'll realize that they were missing something from the beginning. So don't be shy. Don't wait. If the people who are supposed to be leading aren't, jump in, do it. Don't wait. Don't ask permission. Just go.
No, I would totally agree with that. I think that's super, super key, especially as female presenting people. It's really, really important because we are trained culturally not to speak up. So speak up, use your voice.
And I'm going to jump in and add my 2 cents here because I'm not afraid to do that. But if you see people struggling with that, even if they're not explicit about it, but you suspect it, say something to them. Tell them that they're visible too. Pick them up. One of my favorite melee events ever, here's my no shit there I was story, was a 100 Minutes War in the East. And we had the 2 big bad ogres fight, and they were both team captains for this melee, and one picked a team he thought would win with all the hottest sticks, and the other picked a team of under 6, all the women, bouncing newbies who are, most of us were under 5'5", compared to this team of giant ogres who are all over 6 foot, tall men with case. We were all brand new, and we ended up taking the day because we all bonded in the first like 20 minutes waiting for layout, and we all talked to each other. No one was above any job. So if you see something, go up to them and tell them how visible they are. Tell them we're gonna go have fun. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that as well. Not that I should have done that. And Remy, you didn't completely misunderstand the question. You still had a good, viable answer. Do you have anything to add with the clarification to the question?
I think everyone else had much better ideas than I can come up with, so I'm good.
Laetres, you were making some hand gestures? Are you good?
Oh, I do that all the time. It gets me in trouble. Let's see. Well, you know, we're fortunate to be a smaller kingdom, and we have very active geopolitical unit practices, baronial, shire, blah, 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 blah. So a lot of the recruiting, encouragement happens during the weekly practices with the newer people or the people that are feeling frustrated, and the communication and talking about it and encouraging people to talk about what their concerns are, or the fact that they're feeling a little bit left out. There are a lot, you know, practices, I'm sure, for true everywhere. The first half hour is more social hour than anything else. Talking in, building that relationship, talking with people before you actually start the combat and sparring and drills, blah, blah, blah. So working it from that aspect where it's not the pressure of an event or you're at the war or whatever, and trying to slug someone into a unit, I think that takes some of that perceived pressure of having to perform all of a sudden in this big crazy melee. And then again, we have a very loosey-goosey fun melee event at the beginning of the year that allows us to kind of mix things up. And there's someone out there, you know, like I said, there are units, including mine, that purposely reach out to people that aren't attached to anyone. We'll go up to and approach them and ask if they'd like to fight with us. We don't want to wait for them to raise their hand like a dodgeball and say, hey, no one's picking me. So they feel that they get that experience of working with different people and see if it works for them or not. So it really is, if you've been through it, realizing that you need to extend that hand to share that knowledge and embracing these people that might feel like they're a little a sidestep away from being directly involved with it, and helping them build and find that path of what they want to do. And let's face it, there's people that like melees, there's people that only like melees and don't like tournament, and vice versa. You're not going to be able to take that square peg and put it in the round. No, you've got to be able to respect too that, hey, they don't want to do melee, that's good for them. That's not a lesser person. They just want to do what they're enjoying. And just because I'm having fun doing it doesn't mean I expect other people to have that same experience. So you can't do that projection either. So really, I think it's more starting at the grassroots level, addressing their concerns and involvement and working out from there.
I think it speaks to some of the issues we've mentioned earlier too, with what makes or break a unit, about cults of personality and the inability to put your ego at the door when scenarios like this occur, when people are being overlooked like this. And that doesn't mean that it's not a viable unit. It doesn't mean that it's not repairable, irreparable. English is hard. But it does mean that there are some fundamental issues that might be worked on. Anyway, what a somber note to end on.
Oh, I can cheer us up.
I think we need some more unit jokes.
So Laetres, when your unit has advanced and the line is a little out of sync, do you dress left or dress right?
He has been waiting all night for that joke. It is in our outline like 4 times now with comments like, can I ask it now? Can I ask it now? Can I ask it now?
I always tend to swing to the left.
As a tailor, that made me really happy.
Oh, I just wanted to keep my answer brief.
Oh.
But you're already talking about pegs.
I'm a 5-foot boxer.
All right.
I really want to make a really bad joke, but we're still recording and we haven't done our outro.
Wait,
you could say we've blown our load.
This is not the episode for bad jokes.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm not making another blow your load joke. I think we're out of units.
So, to our panelists.
All right. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who showed up, all the viewers. Big thank yous to our panelists and everyone who asked questions. We couldn't do it without you. I guess we could, but it would be awful. It would just be Wistric and I waxing poetic.
Waxing your what? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Our poetic, not our units. Not
okay.
Our units.
Heard it wrong. Sorry.
And I wanted to say thank you again. Tune in with us next time. I don't know what topic we'll be touching on in number 7, but it will definitely not be units. What a shame. But we should be back in 2 weeks. Same time, same place.
Thank you very much for having us. It was a lot of fun.
I can't wait to meet you on the melee field. I'm going to be looking for all that.
All that.
And honestly, thank you very much for approaching me and asking me to be on. This was fun, and it was great to hear a more variety of viewpoints on how things are done. So.
I know it's good for us in the mid-realm because it can't be all Penzic all the time.
I know. I figured there's a lot of mid-realm fighters, so I tried to use smaller words most of the time.
I know. We're kind of.
And on that note, everybody.
We like our